a neocloud operator signs the term sheet for 80 new racks of Nvidia GPUs. Above his signature sits a detail most coverage of the AI boom skips entirely. Part of the financing behind this order traces back to Nvidia's own balance sheet. The company sold to the public as a chip maker has quietly become one of its own customers' lenders. On August 10, 2026, Nvidia's own newsroom made that pattern official at a scale far beyond one term sheet. A new financing platform, built with 6 of the largest names on Wall Street: Apollo Global Management, BlackRock, Blackstone, Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, and KKR, designed to move more than $500 billion of third-party capital into the same AI data centers that buy Nvidia's own chips. Nvidia's own chief executive said, on the record, what the newsroom release only implied. Jensen Huang told CNBC that many of the labs buying his chips are, in his words, growing faster than their balance sheets and long-term credit profiles can support. That is not a company caught doing something it hid. It is a company describing, in its own release and its own chief executive's own words, a financing gap it decided to help close itself. The obvious story is a simple one. Demand for Nvidia's chips is real, so Nvidia sells at record volume, and record volume means record revenue. Nothing more complicated than a company making something people want and pricing it accordingly. Nvidia's own numbers back that reading up to a point. Data center revenue has grown enormously in 3 years, and a real share of that growth is exactly what it looks like. Organic willingness to pay for compute nobody had a substitute for. But roughly a quarter of the answer is not demand at all. It is Nvidia's own commitment sitting underneath it. Under the same financing platforms, the analyst newsletter Semi-Analysis estimates Nvidia may absorb residual value, buying back or absorbing unused capacity on up to about a quarter of a neocloud financing deal's cost. Same company, 2 roles, seller, backstop, a quarter of the deal's risk absorbed by the firm selling the hardware, not a hidden number. Reported, analyzed, still barely discussed. The financing increasingly runs through a second, older mechanism too. The chips themselves as collateral. CoreWeave's own August 2023 announcement set the template. A debt facility led by Magnetar Capital and Blackstone, secured directly against Nvidia H100 GPUs instead of real estate or receivables. In 2023, that facility was $2.3 billion. Analysts now estimate the same collateral pattern anchors somewhere between $10 and $11 billion across lenders in 2026. The mechanism did not begin when this year's AI headlines began. It began as soon as the chips became valuable enough to lend against, and has simply scaled with the boom since. 2 eras of the same lending decision. One holds its value for decades, without needing anyone's continued enthusiasm. The other holds its value for a single hardware generation and depends on the market and the chip's own maker continuing to want more of the same chips financed tomorrow. The credit officer who signs that kind of loan has a professional term for how confident she should feel about that collateral. She is about to learn how much of that confidence is actually hers. She is 41, a senior credit officer at a mid-size project finance fund, and for 11 years, her entire discipline has rested on one rule: never lend against a depreciating asset without an independent floor on its resale value. This year, for the first time in her career, that floor is set almost entirely by one company's continued willingness to keep buying its own chips back. She underwrites large loans collateralized by racks of Nvidia GPUs, and the resale value she models on those racks depends on demand that Nvidia itself is, in several of the deals crossing her desk this quarter, directly financing. The client who wants the loan and the number that makes the loan look safe both trace back to the same balance sheet. She has flagged this internally. Twice. Both times the answer was identical. Every other lender in the market is pricing the collateral the same way, using the same assumption, because there is currently no independent data to price it against. If the lender and the buyer increasingly report to the same balance sheet, whose independent judgment is actually left to test the deal? Being right about the risk and being competitive in the market have quietly become two different jobs. Her title says she prices risk independently. What she actually prices, more and more, is one company's confidence in itself. What we've been calling an unusually large financing platform is actually something closer to a control point on a signal the entire market depends on and no longer fully has. Ordinarily, an arm's-length purchase tells an outside observer something useful. An independent buyer looked at the numbers and judged the purchase worth making on its own. When the seller is also arranging the financing, sometimes investing directly in the buyer, sometimes backstopping its downside, that signal weakens. Demand and financing approval stop being fully separable events. Nvidia's position inside one of its own largest customers makes the point concrete. In January 2026, Bloomberg reported Nvidia added roughly $2 billion to its stake in CoreWeave, alongside a capacity purchase backstop initially valued at $6.3 billion, running through April 2032, an arrangement under which Nvidia is positioned to buy CoreWeave's own unsold compute. The exact terms of that backstop are not fully public. 3 outlets independently confirm the headline figures. None has published Nvidia's own contract language. That gap is worth naming, not filling in. 10 months earlier, in November 2025, Bloomberg reported Microsoft and Nvidia together committed up to $15 billion to Anthropic. Nvidia's share up to $10 billion, Microsoft's up to $5 billion. And Anthropic, in the same announcement, committed to spend at least $30 billion on Microsoft's own Azure cloud. The pattern is not new to technology cycles. Equipment makers ran a version of it decades ago. Telecom vendors financed the same carriers who then spent that financing buying the equipment back, a structure that read as organic growth right up until demand slowed and the financing had to be written off as loss, not counted as revenue. Structurally, the closest comparison here is not a bank. Picture a furniture store that also owns the only lender willing to finance the couches and separately promises to buy back any couch it cannot resell. That store is the seller, the lender, and the buyer of last resort, inside one transaction. Nvidia currently occupies a comparable 3-role position with at least one of its own largest customers. None of this makes the arrangement illegal or the growth fake. According to market analysts, this is closer to macroeconomic engineering executed in plain sight than to anything hidden. What it removes is simpler, and in its own way more uncomfortable. The ability of anyone outside those balance sheets to tell, from the numbers alone, how much of the AI boom is demand finding its own capital, and how much of it is capital finding its own demand. The credit officer's floor, the analyst's estimate, the regulator who has not ruled yet, all of them are pricing a number that only one company can currently see in full. Nvidia sells chips, Nvidia also, increasingly, decides who can afford to buy them. Not through a scandal, through a press release, through a term sheet, through a balance sheet that shows up twice in the same transaction and calls that ecosystem growth. Every neo-cloud operator, every credit officer, every fund modeling GPU resale value is negotiating with a company that is, at the same time, financing the other side of the table. For now, the collateral holds. The chips are new. The demand behind them, at least the visible part of it, is real. But a GPU is not a building, does not hold its value by sitting still. Every hardware generation, a newer, faster chip arrives, and the older one, the one sitting in a vault as someone's loan collateral, is worth less than it was the day the loan was signed. Nobody has priced what happens when that clock runs faster than the loans assume. What happens to a loan built on collateral that has a shelf life shorter than the loan itself?